Good morning. Okay, in my last week Kathāvatthu discussion, the last aspect we discussed was clearing the meaning of terms, Vachana Sodhana. In that we had Sakavadi asking, is the Pudgala known? And conversely, is that which is known Pudgala? Then Paravadi answers, the person is known. Conversely, of that which is known, some is Pudgala, some is not Pudgala. Does that mean that Pudgala is known, some Pudgala is not known? One should not say so. Now, in this conversation, there is a very interesting logical concept we need to understand in order to understand this. Now, the question in Pali is Puggalo Upalabhati, and then second question is Upalabhati Puggaloti. Now, the distinction between these two, number one is regular question, Puggalo Upalabhati. Now, this is the question that has been debated all the way through. So, whether Pudgala is known in the real and ultimate sense, Puggalo Upalabhati. However, at this junction, the Sakavadi asked the question, Upalabhati Puggaloti. Now, in Pali, of course, this is just the conversion of two terms. The first question is Puggalo Upalabhati. The second is Upalabhati Puggaloti. However, there is a very important distinction here. So when you say Puggalo Upalabhati, Puggala is known in the real and ultimate sense. The second question means all that known in the real and ultimate sense is Pudgala. So the second question has to be translated as all those known are Pudgala. Now you can see that the second question is logically totally different from the first question. First question is whether Pudgala is known in real and ultimate sense. The second question asks all that known are whether all that known are Pudgala. So there is this is what is called conversion. Now I thought today give you a brief presentation on conversion and distribution, because these are the two basic logical concepts that are going to be useful to understand this. Now again, it is very interesting. You may be thinking that how come those ancient time people know these things? Actually, people may have known even more things than we know today. So we can't say simply because some of these things are logical rules, they were not known. Of course, what we are going to study this distribution and conversion, these are known from in the Western tradition from Aristotle's time. But of course, Buddha lived before that. And then the Kathāvatthu may be somewhere around the same time, like 2nd century, 3rd century BCE, when the Aristotle lived in ancient Greece. So these concepts can be there in different traditions. Different traditions may have developed. So although in the subsequent tradition we do not have a concept to name it, we have had the idea. So Upalabhati Puggaloti, Puggalo Upalabhati. So this whole thing. Now, in order to get an understanding of this, let me go into this short presentation. Now, there are 4 different standard forms of categorical propositions. Number 1 is universal affirmative. Number 2 is universal negative. Particular affirmative is number 3 and particular negative is number 4. Now, these are called categorical propositions. Now, categorical propositions actually mean when you have certain proposition. Now, the word proposition is used in the simple sense of sentence or statement. However, the word proposition in philosophy goes a little deeper. Now, proposition is something, not only a statement, but also something we have in our mind. Okay? Now, say for example, I say something in English, you say something in Pali and Vietnamese and like that. But then proposition is the same. If you are seeing, the dog is running, I can say that in Sinhala or English, or you can say in Burmese, but the proposition in all of our mind is the same. So therefore, proposition goes to a little bit into states of mind. Okay. Now that aspect is also there in proposition. At the same time, proposition is like any kind of statement. Categorical proposition means basically when you make a categorical proposition, it is very clear that about what you are making that statement. And also what you are saying about that particular thing. Okay. Now, any kind of categorical proposition, we say all politicians are liars. So now in that categorical proposition, we know that we are talking about politicians. And then what are we saying? That we are saying that all politicians are liars. Okay. Now these two things are categorically known, clear. So therefore, maybe these statements are called categorical proposition, but anyhow, in logical studies, these are known as categorical propositions. But these categorical propositions are, particularly in the Western philosophy, they are very much set category. You have affirmative and negative, universal and particular. So universal, affirmative, all politicians are liars. Universal means that particular statement applies to, when you say all politicians, it applies to all politicians. So universal. Universal means you have to understand the concept of class here. When we are talking about the class of, that class means class of, the group of, particular members. And then when we say something is, the universal to that particular class means every member of that class shares that particular characteristic. So we have universal, and then affirmative means positive sentence. Then we have universal negative, universal but negative. No politicians are liars. So in the first statement we say all politicians are liars. So it is about all politicians, and also it's a positive statement. We say who they are. And then the second statement is also about all politicians, but it says that they are not liars. So it is a negative thing. So that is universal, affirmative, and universal, negative. Then we have particular affirmative, particular negative. Particular affirmative means that we are not talking about all. We are talking about only part of a group. So we say some politicians are liars. So we don't talk about all politicians. So therefore it is not a universal statement, but we are talking about some politicians. So we say, when we say some politicians are liars, we make a particular affirmative statement. And then particular negative statement, some politicians are not liars. So we are talking about some politicians, not again all politicians, but they are not liars. Now in the traditional Western logic, we are using this number one, universal affirmative proposition is called A category, A propositions, A type propositions. Next one is called E. Third one is called I. Fourth one is called O. These propositions are traditionally named as A, E, I, O, coming from Latin words affirmo, nego. Affirm, you see A letter is the first one, then the affirm I letter, that means number 3. Nego, E is the second letter, O is the fourth letter. So nego means in Latin language, I negate. Affirmo, actually O is missing there, I affirm, I negate. So according to that usage, A, E, I, O. A proposition, affirm, then look at the 3 again, affirmative, affirm, A, F, F, I. Then the negative propositions, number 2, ni, go, particular negative in number 4. So these are basically categorical propositions in logic. In other words, in logical language, when we say we are talking about propositional logic, now propositional logic is basically dealing with these 4 types of statements. Don't worry, I'm not going to teach you logic here, but I'm trying to make you understand only the basic concept so that we can understand the Kathāvatthu. So these are the 4 basic propositions, and then these propositions have a quality and also quantity. Now, quality of the propositions, 2, affirmative or negative. Of these propositions, 1 and 3 are affirmative, the other 2 are negative. So when we are talking about categorical propositions, we are talking about the quality of the categorical propositions. So the quality of the categorical proposition is affirmative or negative. So it can be affirmative or it can be negative. Okay, so affirmative or negative. Then the quantity of the propositions, universal or particular. Of these propositions, number 1 and 2 apply to all members of a class. The other 2 apply only to some members. So when we look at categorical proposition, we can see that there is a quality. So quality is either categorical proposition is positive or it is negative. That is quality. And the quantity is always whether it is universal, which means whether it is applicable to all members of a class, or particular. Now, quantifying terms are, or they are also called quantifiers, all, no, some. So in most of the standard categorical propositions, either you have all, or you have no, or you have some. So all politicians are liars, no politicians are liars, some politicians are liars, some politicians are not liars. So like that you have basically, these are called quantifiers, quantifying terms or quantifiers. Universal propositions are indicated by all or no. Particular propositions are indicated by some or any similar term. Now, sometimes now these very clear-cut sentences we come across in the logical textbooks. However, in ordinary speech, in any other books dealing with other subjects, we may not have exactly the same sentences. Like in here, upalabbati puggalo, puggalo upalabbati. We don't have all or some or like that. But we will have to construe it to suit that structure so that we can understand it. So basically we are talking about quality and also the quantity of the propositions. So quantifying terms are all, no, some, and then universal propositions are indicated by all or no, particularly by some. And then we will come to distribution. So now you know quantity, now you know the quality, then we come to the distribution. Distribution refers to the ways in which terms occur in categorical propositions. So the term, now when we are talking about terms, actually we will go back and now when we have all politicians are liars, now in this sentence you have two terms. One term is called subject term, the other thing is called predicate term. So subject and predicate. So you have subject, predicate. Now it is important for us to remember these two things. Subject. Now when you say all politicians are liars, subject is all politicians. Predicate is are liars. Okay? So any sentence we can analyze subject and predicate. Okay? So when we say no politicians are liars, subject is no politicians, then predicate is are liars. Some politicians are liars, some politicians are liars. Some politicians are not liars, some politicians is subject term, predicate is are not liars. So we have subject and we have predicate. Now distribution means whether you can interchange these things, whether you can put the predicate in the place of the subject term or whether you can put the subject term in the place of the predicate term. Okay? That is basically the distribution means. Now when we study Kathāvatthu, you know, this important concept comes. And the same thing, similar things we come when we study Abhidhamma Pitaka, say Yamaka. You know, text like that, you know, you can really analyze into these things. So it is useful for you to have, you know, this particular understanding. So we have subject term and also we have predicate term. Now, distribution refers to the ways in which terms occur in categorical proposition. A proposition distributes a term if it refers to all members of the class designated by that term. So you say a proposition distributes a term if it refers to all members of the class designated by that term. Now if you take all politicians are liars, now in that categorical proposition, politicians are distributed because it refers to all politicians. Now if you say all dogs are animals, then you are distributing all dogs, not animals. Okay? So whenever we have that type of sentence, we are distributing the predicate term. So when we say all politicians are liars, the politicians is distributes, which means whatever it is said is applicable to all politicians. All politicians means all politicians. Okay? So that is what it means basically. A proposition distributes a term if it refers to all members of the class designated by that term. So a proposition distribute, it is subject term. A proposition distribute, it is subject term, but not it is predicate term. Now, example you look at and you understand, we say all dogs are animals. Now in this statement, dogs are distributed, animals not distributed. For example, you say all dogs are animals, but can you say all animals are dogs? No. Clearly, all animals are not dogs because there can be many other types of animals, right? So now it is very clear, simple. But of course, one way to put that will be when we say all dogs are animals, we are talking about universal affirmative propositions or A-type proposition. So in A-type proposition, always your subject term is distributed, but the predicate term is not. So, it's very simple in that sense. So, a proposition distribute, it is subject term, but not it is predicate term. So, we say all dogs are animals, but we can't say all animals are dogs. Now, when we look at these two things, there are the other ways also to understand this. Now, when you talk about all dogs are animals, you are talking about the class of dogs and class of animals, right? Now, if you take class of dogs, it includes only one species, right? But if you take animals, animals can include any number of categories. Dogs are only one group among them, right? So, this whole concept is ultimately also deals with something called limits of the concepts. Limits. Always the concepts have limits. Now, for example, if we take something like this, we take, so this is, we can say this is the class of animals. Now, within that we can have dogs. Within that we can have cows. Within this we can have, any number of lions, deer, and all that. Now, you see which concept can be coming in within which concept. Now, obviously, if we have this for dogs, within that we cannot include the class of animals, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious, because when we talk about animals, we are talking about much larger group where many things are included. But dog is only one category. So in one manner, even in these diagrams, you can show that which comes under which. Now, this is very important for us to understand when we understand the concepts. Okay? What is the limit of the concepts? Now, you remember when you are studying Rupang Rupak Kandoti. Now, this question comes in the Abhidhamma. Whether Rupa is Rupa Kandha. Are you familiar with this question? Rupang Rupak Kandhoti. Now, whole idea is that in another way you can put the same question, which concept is the larger concept? Under which concept comes? Is that clear? So the whole problem is when you ask Rupang Rupak Kandhoti. Now, whether Rupa is included in the Rupa Kandha or Rupa Kandha is included in the Rupa. Now, I don't remember. I think the answer is Rupa Kando, the Rupang, but Piya Rupang, Sata Rupang, and many other things are also in the Rupa. So, Rupa Kanda includes in the Rupa, but not Rupa is included in the Rupa Kanda. Right? Anyway, that's my memory, but I may be wrong. We can check it again. But there you can see, ultimately it deals with, the limit of the concept. So remember this word in this kind of study, what we are doing here in the Kathāvatthu and also particularly Abhidhamma, this idea of limit of the concept is very important. Now, limit of the concept, you can do a very valuable, good research, on this concept. What is the Buddhist now? There is quite a lot of literature written on this idea in the Western tradition and many other traditions also. In the Buddhist tradition also, we have a lot of material relevant to this. The limit of the concept. So, how much we can extend certain things. So now, for example, when we say a proposition distribute, it is subject term, but not it is predicate term. So we say all dogs are animals, but we cannot say all animals are dogs. So only the subject term is distributed, not the predicate. Now when we say E proposition distribute both subject and predicate term. no athletes are vegetarians, no vegetarians are athletes. Now, E proposition means A, E, I, O. E proposition is universal negative, right? Universal negative. Now, when we say no athletes are vegetarians, actually it distributes both. Because when you say no athletes are vegetarians, it applies to all the groups of people who are vegetarians. And then also it applies to the whole group of vegetarians when you say no. Now, you have to understand there is a difference. Universal affirmative, only subject term is distributed. But here, when you say all, we say no athletes are vegetarians, that means if you take the class of vegetarians, within that there are no athletes. And if you take the class of athletes, there are no vegetarians. So in that sense, you can see that vegetarians and the negative sentence can be distributed in both sense. But of course, there can be vegetarians who are not athletes. But when you have a negative statement distributes both subject and predicates, because then we say no athletes are vegetarians. I mean, it's equals to no vegetarians are athletes. So you can converse, you can interchange both, right? In the first universal affirmative, you cannot do that. Because you cannot interchange, then of course the meaning changes. But here what happens is we are talking about two different classes, but they are kind of intermingled. So no athletes are vegetarians, no vegetarians are athletes. So E proposition distribute both. In I proposition, both subject and predicate terms are undistributed. So now I proposition is some soldiers are cowards. Now that's a I proposition, that means particular affirmative proposition. Particular affirmative proposition, we say some soldiers are cowards. This proposition does not refer to all soldiers or to all cowards. Neither class is wholly included or wholly excluded. Now that's important. When you say I proposition, neither subject nor predicate is distributed, because it refers to only some soldiers and some cowards. It says some soldiers are cowards, but it doesn't say talk about the all soldiers, right? It talks about only some. And then also it talks about cowards. Of course, cowards are not only soldiers, right? Cowards can be many other people, like whoever, anybody. So they are in the I proposition, neither subject term nor predicate term is distributed. So that's it. So when you say some soldiers are covered, this proposition does not refer to all soldiers or to all cowards. Neither class is wholly included or wholly excluded. So some soldiers are cowards. Also we can say some cowards are soldiers, right? It's true. Some cowards are soldiers. Some soldiers are cowards. Some cowards are soldiers. Because it can be interchanged, because it doesn't distribute. And then O proposition distributes its predicate term but not its subject term. Some dogs are not German shepherds. It refers only to some dogs. So dogs is not distributed but refers to all German shepherds. Now their O proposition distribute is predicate term but not its subject term. So the predicate term, if you say some dogs are not German shepherds, but we can't say some German shepherds are not dogs, right? Because all German shepherds are dogs, but not all dogs are German shepherds, right? So there what happens is when we say some dogs are not German shepherds, it refers to, it distributes the class of all German shepherds. but it does not distribute the class of all dogs. It refers to only some dogs. So dogs is not distributed, but refers to all German Shepherds. So, it refers to a particular. So when you say some dogs are not German Shepherds, we are talking about some dogs, but also we are talking about all German Shepherds. So some dogs are not German Shepherds, but we can't interchange it, distribute it. Some German Shepherds are not dogs. We can't say that because we are talking about a particular class of dogs. So now you can see that we covered A, E, I, O propositions, how we are going to, distribute these terms. Now, finally, when we come to conversion, now this is very important. Conversion is to interchange subject and predicate terms of a categorical proposition. Now, this is the conversion. So, the distribution is actually what is applicable to all classes, what is applicable to some parts. Now, conversion means really the interchange. We already covered this concept. In E propositions, both subject and predicate are interchangeable. No men are angels, no angels are men. Now, we saw the same thing. No athletes are vegetarians, no vegetarians are athletes. In E propositions, both subject and predicate are interchangeable. Some writers are women, some women are writers. When you say some soldiers are cowards, we can say some cowards are soldiers. Some writers are women, some women are writers. In A propositions, conversion is not valid. Now in A proposition, conversion is not valid. We say all dogs are animals, but we cannot say all animals are dogs. So in a universal affirmative proposition, conversion is not valid. In O propositions, the conversion is not valid again. Some dogs are not German Shepherds, but you cannot say some German Shepherds are not dogs. So, distribution and conversion. So, distribution means whenever you use all or no, you are distributing that term. But when you are using some, you are not distributing. Okay? Now, that is distribution. And then when we come to conversion, conversion means subject term and the predicate term. Whether you can put the subject term in the place of predicate term and vice versa. Now, in that, of course, something very important for us to remember is when you take A proposition, that means universal affirmative proposition, conversion is not valid. You can't converse because we say all dogs are animals, but we can't put the other way around. We can't say all animals are dogs. We can say all Toyotas are cars, but you can't say all cars are Toyotas, like that, All mangoes are trees, but all trees are not mangoes, so like that. Okay, now this is basically the idea of conversion and then distribution. In order to know conversion and distribution, we went into 4 types of categorical proposition: universal affirmative, universal negative, particular affirmative, particular negative, A, E, I, O. Okay. Understand? Yes. Any questions? Number 4, Sakavadiyas is the Pudgala known, and conversely, is that which is known the Pudgala. Okay? Then Paravadi says, the person is known. Conversely, that which is known, some is Pudgala, some is not Pudgala. Now, it's very interesting. Paravadi gets this idea of conversion. So he says, person is known. But then he says, among the known things, some are Pudgala, some are not Pudgala. Now, it's like when we say all dogs are animals. Of course, some dogs are animals, some dogs are, some animals are not dogs. I'm sorry. Some animals are dogs, some animals are not dogs. So in the same manner, he says that that which is known, some is Pudgala, some is not Pudgala. In other words, known objects are, not distributed. But all Pudgala is distributed, so non-thing is applicable to all Pudgalas, but not the vice versa. So you can really construe this statement into this particular language. So the person is known, conversely, of that which is known, some is Pudgala, some is not Pudgala. Then Sakavadi asks, does that mean that some Pudgala is known, some Pudgala is not known? Now there Sakavadi asking again, can you apply this thing to some Pudgala and some not Pudgala? That means you are trying to analyze Pudgala. But then that is not applicable because this is a universal affirmative. So it is universally applicable to all Pudgalas. Okay? So you can't say some Pudgala and some not Pudgala. You can't make a particular affirmative statement out of that. Okay? That is. So he says, when the Sakavadi asks, does that mean that some Pudgala is known and some Pudgala is not known? One should not say so. Now you see that, what is going on here in the logical thing is, Sakavadi is trying to see whether Paravadi knows the implications, logical implications of what he says. When a Pudgala is known in the real and ultimate sense, Sakavadi want to know that all that is real and known in the real and ultimate sense are Pudgala. Of course, then you see that Pudgala is known, real and ultimate sense, but of course, all that is known in real and ultimate sense can be many other things also. Okay, that's the idea. So, clearing the meaning of the terms, Vachana Sodhana, you can see that Vachana Sodhana contains this basic idea of conversion. So, E-I-A-O propositions, how it go. Okay, distribution, and then distribution of the terms, quality and quantity, and then we have these 4 different statements. Okay. We will keep on reading, or we will take a short break of 5 minutes and then we will convene again. Okay. We will read from that point of view. That earlier discussion is relevant to the clearing of meanings of terms, Vachana Sodhana. The next is inquiry into terms, concepts, Paññatta Anuyoga, Paññatta Anuyoga, Paññatti Anuyoga. So, Paññatti means terms or concept. Now, there are 4 main sets of the argument here. Number 1 argument is Sakavadi, in the sphere of Rupa, there is Rupi Pudgala. Paravadi says yes. Then Sakavadi asks, in the sphere of Kama, there is Kami Pudgala. One should not say so. Now, in this context, Rupi Pudgala means Pudgala with material body or one born in the fine material realm. But Kami Pudgala means sensuous person, not necessarily one born into the sensuous realm. The similarity of the 2 concepts is only structural. But even if we understand the term as Pudgala with Kama, not all people in the Kama world are with Kama. So the similarity of the concept is not is only structural. Now you see this is very interesting. This the argument is something to do with also the structure and the grammar. Now when you say person born is the Rupa world, we say Rupi Pudgala. So basically this concept of Rupi Pudgala, in the sphere of Rupa there is Rupi Pudgala. So the idea is that the person who is living in the Rupa realm is called Rupi Pudgala, Rupi. But the word Rupi Pudgala can mean, Rupi can mean also the person with Rupa, Rupin. So Rupi Pudgala means person with the Rupa or person who is living in the Rupa world, right? So both meanings are there. However, when we say the Rupi Pudgala means person with Rupa, then we have to think there can be people who are without Rupa. Of course, there is, in the Buddhist literature, there is one Brahma world where people do not have Rupa. But apart from that, it is not easy to talk about a person without Rupa, right? Usually we are talking about Pudgala with Rupa. So, Rupi Pudgala basically means the Pudgala born into the Rupa world. So, this is Rupi Pudgala. Now, if this is true, what about Kami Pudgala? Now, what about Kami Pudgala? Now, do we say Kami Pudgala to the person who is born into the Kama world? Usually no. Kami Pudgala means Pudgala with Kama. So, we say Kami Pudgala means Pudgala with Kama. Now, Kami Pudgala, grammatically and structurally both are same. Rupi Pudgala and Kami Pudgala. But however, in the language, Rupi Pudgala means basically one, Kami Pudgala means another. We don't use the word Kami Pudgala to refer to a person who is born in the Kama world. Right? Kami Pudgala is person with Kama. Now, again, when we think, we can see that even if you take Kami Pudgala as Pudgala born into the Kama world, that doesn't necessarily mean that all Pudgalas in the Kama world are with Kama, right? There can be Arahants around here, who knows? Without Kama. So even though you are in the Kama world, that doesn't mean that you are with Kama. Buddha was in the Kama world, but Buddha did not have Kama, right? So, so you can see, again, the Sakavadi and Paravadi in this argument, Sakavadi want to see that Paravadi is sharp enough to know this linguistic, this thing. Of course, Paravadi is sharp enough. So, he says that Rupi Pudgala is fine, but Kami Pudgala is not. Because when you say Kami Pudgala, you are not saying exactly the same thing as Rupi Pudgala. So he says one should not say so. So that's the one part of the argument. Then the second part, someone leaving Rupa realm is born in the Arupa realm. Yes. Rupa Dhatuya Rupanya Sattat, Yamanta, Kama Dhatuya Kama Sattat. Okay, and so on. Arupa Dharupi Pudgaloti Yamanta. Atti kochi rupadhatuya chuto arupadhatum uppajjatiti amanta. Rupi puggalo upachinno arupi puggalo jatoti nahevang mattabbe. Now this is again the argument is atti kochi rupadhatuya chuto. He leaving rupadhatu arupadhatum uppajjatiti. He is born in the arupadhatu. Then Paravadi says yes. Then Sakavadi asks, Rupi Puggalo upachinno arupi Puggalo jatoti. Rupi Puggala is destroyed and Arupi Puggala is born. Paravadi says, don't say so. So someone living Rupa realm is born in the Arupa realm. Yes. Puggala from Rupa realm is annihilated and the Puggala in the Arupa realm is born. Paravadi says, one should not say so. The same argument is repeated, replacing Pudgala with Satta. Now you see, that's another form of the argument. Now, basic idea that someone leaving Rupa realm is born into the Arupa realm. Of course, that is acceptable. But then Sakavadi asks whether the person in the Rupa realm is annihilated and then subsequently he is born in the... Now, you know, a Pudgala being annihilated is not acceptable to Paravadi. But interestingly, that is not acceptable to anybody, right? When we are talking about the rebirth or somebody's birth in the certain realm, we are not saying that, you know, that person in the other realm is annihilated before this person is born. No, we are not talking about, because in the Buddhist language, you know, we never refer to anything annihilated anyway. So this is the second argument. And look at the third type of argument. Kaya and Sarira are the same in meaning. Yes. Kayotiva, Sarirantiva, Sarirantiva, Kayotiva, Kayang Apyang Karitva, Esese, Ekatte, Same, Samabhage, Tajjateti. You must pardon my Burmese reading. Okay. So, Kaya and Sarira are the same in meaning? Yes. Pudgala and Jiva are the same in meaning? Yes. Kaya is one, Pudgala is another? Yes. Jiva is one, Sarira is another? One should not say so. Now, again, follow that argument. That's very interesting. Sakavadi asks, Kaya and Sarira are the same in meaning? Yes. Because when you say Kaya, when you say Sarira, both are similar in meaning. Then the second question, Pudgala and Jiva are the same in meaning? Yes. Because Pudgala is what is really, when Pudgalavadin uses the concept Pudgala, he is really using the term Jiva. Okay? You remember that question, Tang Jivang, Tang Sarirang, Anyang Jivang, Anyang Sarirang. So Jiva Sarira. Jiva was the Atma aspect, Sarira was the body aspect, right? So the question was Tang Jivan, Tang Sarirang, Anyang Jivang, Anyang Sarirang. So Pudgala and the Jiva are the same in meaning? Paravadi says yes, because for Paravadi, what he means by Pudgala is really the Jiva. So same in meaning. Then Sakavadi asks, Kaya is one, Pudgala is another. To that also Paravadi says yes. Kaya is one, Pudgala is another. Because you can't say Kaya and Pudgala are the same, because, you know, Kaya is destroyed at some point, right? Sarira or physical body is destroyed. So you can't say Pudgala is destroyed at the death. So therefore Paravadi says yes, Kaya is one, Pudgala is another. Then the Sakavadi's question is, Jiva is one, Sarira is another. Now Jiva refers to Atma, Atma is one, Sarira is another. One should not say so. Why Paravadi doesn't want to accept that? Jiva is one, Sarira is another. Now Jiva there is Atma. Then Paravadi has to accept that Jiva can exist without Sarira. Now, Paravadi doesn't want to talk about any kind of being who has only the Jiva. Okay? Paravadi is talking only about Jiva with Sarira, or embodied person, in other words. From here, Sakavadi imposes refutation on Paravadi and presents his argument in both MP and MT forms. If you admit that Kaya and Sarira are the same, and Pudgala and Jiva are the same, then you must say that Jiva is one, Sarira is another. So the argument is, if you admit that Kaya and Sarira are the same, Pudgala and Jiva are the same, then you must say that Jiva is one, Sarira is another, and so on. Like, you know, when you are talking about two different things, you are talking Kaya, Sarira, Jiva, Sarira. So Sakavadi's argument is, then you must admit that you are talking about two different things. But on the other hand, Paravadi can say, when I talk about use two different things, and when I say that Kaya and Sarira are the same, he can argue that, say, I am not talking about two different things, I am talking only about two different words. not two different things, right? So Sakavadi seems to be arguing you are using two different concepts, so you must admit two different things. But on the other hand, Paravadi is not committed to it. Paravadi can say, no, I am just using two different words. Of course, two different words, Kaya and Sarira. Then Pudgala and Jiva. Then you must say that Jiva is one, Sarira is another, and so on. So, argument goes on like that. So, Kayotiva Sarirantiva, Sarirante Kayotiva, Kayang Apyang Karitva, Esese, Ekatte Same Samabhage Tajjate. I mean, whether these concepts are the same, Amanta. But look at the words used. Esese, Ekatte, Same, Samabhage Tajjate. Pugalotiva, Jivotiva, Pugalotiva, Puggalang Apyang Karitva, and so on. Then again the same thing, Amanta. Anyo Kayo, Anyo Pugaloti, Amanta. Anyang Jivang, Anyang Sariranti, Nehevang Vattabbe. Then you have Ajana Hinighan, Hanchikayotiva, Sariranti, and so on, the argument goes on in that manner. So, Sakavadi and Paravadi argument. But it is very interesting to see that, what is going on in the whole processes. That's what I said, number 3 type. And then we will move into the next page, page 6, number 4. Paravadi. Now this is the Paravadi's term. Paravadi asks, do you admit that the Buddha has said, Attipuggalo Attihitai Patipanno? Sakavadi says, yes. Kaya is one, Pudgala is another. One should not say so. At this point, Paravadi imposes revision on Sakavadi and continues his argument in MP and MT modes. If you admit that Kaya and Sarira are the same, and the Buddha's statement, Attipuggalo Attihitai Patipanno, and so on, then you must assert Kaya is one, Pudgala is another, and so on. Now you can see the Paravadi's argument is based on two things. One thing is the concepts, the other thing is the statement of the Buddha. So the first he gets Sakavadi to admit what the Buddha said, Attipuggalo and so on. Then Kaya is one, Pudgala is another. One should not say so. At this point, Paravadi imposes revision. So, Atti Bhagavata, Bhuttam Bhagavata, Anyo Kayo, Anyo Sariroti, Nahevang Vattabbi. Then, of course, the argument goes. Now, it's kind of interesting when you look at this kind of, now here we are looking at number 7, Paññattānu Yoga, inquiry into the terms. Here you can see in the two arguments how the two arguments go. So again, we can see that neither Sakavadi nor Paravadi are really defeated here. But similar argument structure has for both. Both uses this modus ponens and modus tollens type argument advantage, for their advantage. So now at one level you can talk about the concepts, at another level you can talk about what is referred to by concept. So Pudgala, Kaya, Sarira is more in the conceptual level. You are talking about two different words referring to the same thing. But Jiva and Pudgala acceptable to Paravadi, but not to the Sakavadi. Because when this question was raised in a different context, Tanjivan Tansariram, it was rejected because, the Jiva is not accepted by the Buddha. So, it goes on like that. So this Paññattānu Yoga is concepts. There you can see that again the concepts and what is referred to by concepts. So sometimes if you say Kaya and Sarira, they are different concepts referring to the same thing. But then when you say Jiva and Sarira or Pudgala and Jiva, then we get into a more questionable areas. where, Jiva exists and so on. So this is what is going on in number 7. Okay. And then we will move into the next one, number 8. Examination by destiny, departure, relinking. Gati, Chuti, Patisandhi, Anuyoga. Now, next, number 8 is Gati, Chuti, Patisandhi. Gati is the destiny, where people are born after death. Departure, Chuti, from a particular birth. And then relinking, Patisandhi. So, Gati, Chuti, Patisandhi. Particular birth, departure, and relinking. Leaving and coming. These 3 phenomena are taken together and discussed. I have divided the argument into several sections. We will go one by one. Sakavadi, does Pudgala run from this world to the next world and from there to this world? Yes. Sakavadi asks, does Pudgala run? So is it the Pudgala that runs from this world to the next world and from that world to this world? Paravadi, the Pudgalavadi, says yes. The same Pudgala runs, one should not say so. Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Paranglokan Parasmaloka Imanglokanti Amanta. So Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Paranglokan Parasmaloka Imanglokanti Nahevang Vattabbi. So Puggalo Sansan. So the same Pudgala. To that, Paravadi says one should not say so. Then Sakavadi, does a different Pudgala run? Do both the same and different Pudgala run? The identical Pudgala never runs. Neither the identical Pudgala nor a different Pudgala runs. Paravadi says to all these questions one should not say so. Now, first Sakavadi gets, does Pudgala run from this world to the next world to this world? Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Parangloka. To that, Paravadi says yes. However, when he asks the same Pudgala runs, Paravadi doesn't want to commit to that. Same Pudgala, and also he doesn't want to say it is a different Pudgala. Or he doesn't want to say both same and different Pudgala. Or he doesn't want to say neither the same Pudgala nor different Pudgala. Now here you see there are 4 different questions here. Now this is what is called, subsequently we come across in texts like Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamika Karika. So the 4 positions are same Pudgala, different Pudgala, both same and different Pudgala, neither same nor different Pudgala. Now you see here there are 4 different positions. This is what is called, subsequently became known as Chatushkoti. 4 different propositions. Now usually in the regular logical things we have only number 1 and 2. But then here we have number 3 and also here we have number 4. I'm not going to talk about in detail here because we will be discussing this a little bit in detail when it comes to our Nagarjuna discussion. So, but basically you can see that this is called 4 positions. This is called 4 positions. Strictly it is not given as a logical statement, but in later literature like Mula Madhyamika Karika, you can see that this is being given as a logical statement. But anyhow, there are 4 different positions. Now, interesting thing is, in the standard logical form, number 1 and number 2 are okay, but number 3 is very problematic. Number 4 is also problematic. But anyhow, we will be looking at these things in a different context. Does a different Pudgala run? Both same and different Pudgala run? Identical Pudgala never runs? neither the identical Pudgala nor a different Pudgala runs, so Paravadi says one should not say so. Now, interesting thing is Paravadi want to say that it is the Pudgala that is born again. But when he is asked, it is the same Pudgala. He doesn't want to say yes. Different Pudgala, he doesn't want to say yes. Because again, it is neither same Pudgala nor different Pudgala, right? So again, it's very interesting doctrinally to understand what is really the Paravadi's position. Because Paravadi's position seems to be, in that sense, very close to Sakavadi's, right? Paravadi doesn't want to say same Pudgala runs. That was the wrong belief held by Sati. Viññānaṁ sandhāvati sansarati ananyam. So Paravadi doesn't say that. On the other hand, Paravadi doesn't want to say that completely different Pudgala runs. Okay, so that is number one argument. We'll move into the number two, Paravadi. Now it's Paravadi's turn. Do you not admit that Pudgala runs from this world to the next? Yes, that means no, I do not admit. Because the question is negative. Do you not admit that? You don't accept that Pudgala runs from this world to the next. Sakavadi says, yes means no, I do not. Paravadi, has the Buddha not said, Sattakkhattu parama, Sandhavitvana, Puggalo, Dukkhasantakaro hoti, Sabba Sanyojanak khayati? Sakavadi says yes. Now there the statement refers to Sattakkhattu parama Puggala. Sattakkhattu parama means the maximum 7 births. This person is born in different births. And finally, Sandhavitvana Puggalo Dukkhasantakaro hoti. So this person ends suffering having gone through Sattakkhattu parama, maximum up to 7 births. Sakavadi says yes. Paravadi asks, if so, the Pudgala runs from this world. Paravadi further quotes Anamataggoyam Bhikkave Sansaro and confirms his position again. Now, here it's very interesting. Sakavadi's response is not given here. Because it looks like that Paravadi has a fairly strong position. Because when you talk about Sattakkhattu parama, the Sotapanna Pudgala, Sattakkhattu parama, within maximum 7 birth attain Nirvana. So it must be the continuation of the same person, right? Otherwise, how can you explain that? So, but here again, the subtle difference is like Theravadin would not deny that Sattakkhattu parama is born 7 times, but of course, according to the Theravada view, that person is the continuation or dependently arisen person throughout. But Pudgalavada seems to want to say in that little bit more than that. There's a Sarvastivada view. That particular one person continues through whole thing. So, it's a very subtle because on the one hand, Sakavadi also want to say this. Sakavadi want to say that Sattakkhattu parama Pudgala is there. So, if Sattakkhattu parama Pudgala loses his attainments, then what is the point? So, Sattakkhattu parama Pudgala has to continue. Okay? So, look at that argument, number 2 argument, very carefully. So he says Sattakkhattu parama. Sakavadi says yes. So if so, the Pudgala runs from this world to the next world and comes back. So if that is the case, then the Sattakkhattu parama is gone from here, born somewhere else, come back here, and attains Arahanthood. Paravadi further quotes Anamataggoyam Bhikkave Sansaro and affirms his position. He further quotes Anamataggoyam Bhikkave Sansaro. Now there, of course, we are not given any position from Sakavadi. Sakavadi seems to have accepted this particular statement by the Paravadi. One thing, when I summarize these arguments into very small paragraph, actually in the book you get much longer exposition. So what you should do is keep my paraphrasing along with the text and try to understand, okay? Because what I am given is, I have not given all the literature here, only to the main arguments I have given here. So, number 2 is Paravadi's argument. Then starting from next page, I think page 20, we have Navattabbam Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Parangloka, and that is Paravadi's position. Parasmaloka Iman Lokanti Amanta. Nanuvuttam Bhagavata Sattakattu Paramang Sandhavitvana Puggalo, and so on. Atteva Suttantoti Amanta. Tenahi Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Paranglokan Parasmaloka Iman Lokanti. Then again the next argument is Navattabbam Puggalo Sandhavati Amanta Nanuvuttam Bhagavata Anamatagoyam Bhikkave Sansaro, and so on. Then comes the number 3 is Sakavadi's argument. Sakavadi's argument is again Pudgalarans. Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Paranglokan Parasmaloka Imang Lokanti Amanta. Paravadi says yes. Does the self-same Pudgala run? So Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka. So Puggalo, same. One should not say so. Then Sakavadi's second argument. Does the self-same Pudgala run? Repeat the same question. Paravadi says yes. This indicates that Paravadi understands the same question in 2 different ways. Now in reading Kathāvatthu, this is very important. To the first question, Paravadi says, okay, Sakavadi's question is whether the Pudgala runs. Paravadi says yes. Does the self-same Pudgala run? Paravadi says one should not say so. In the second question, does the Pudgala run? Repeat the same question. Paravadi says yes. Now, there to the same question, Paravadi gives both negative and affirmative answers. This indicates that Paravadi understands the same question in 2 different ways. Now, we are left to think why Paravadi's position is mutually 2 different positions. To the same question, first he says no. To the second question, he says yes. Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Paranglokan Parasmaloka Iman Lokanti Amanti Amanta. So Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Nehevang Vattabbe. So Puggalo Sandhavati Asmaloka Paranglokan Parasmaloka Amanta. Atti Kochi Manusso Hutva Devo Hotiti Amanta. So Manusso So Devoti Nehevang Vattabbe. Now that is the next argument. Moving to the next argument, having become human becomes a Deva. Yes, human being and the Deva identical. One should not say so. Now here, one first becomes a human being, then he becomes a Deva. Of course, Paravadi says yes. Then the question is, are human being and the Deva are identical? First he became human being and then he became Deva. Are they identical? One should not say so. Now the issue is, if Paravadi says, yes, they are identical, then of course it amounts to saying that Paravadi accepts there is something that unchanging in the human being and also in the Deva. Because the same person, he is first human, then he becomes divine. But then Paravadi doesn't want to say it is the same person, right? So are the human being and the Deva identical? One should not say so. Because if you say identical, then of course you are putting yourself in trouble to accepting that there is something unchanging. But Paravadi doesn't want to say that. Paravadi doesn't believe that either. That's why, the differentiating Paravadi's position from Sakavadi's position is not very easy. Human being and the Deva identical, one should not say so. So that's the fourth argument. Then the continuations, Sakavadi, are human being and Deva identical? Repeat the same question, yes. Are human being and the Deva identical? Repeat the same question, yes. Why do you say yes? Because on the other hand, how can you establish the connection between? Because there is a human being who becomes the Deva. So therefore, in that sense, you have to say human being and one now who has become Deva are the same person. So on the one hand, you cannot say they are the same person. On the other hand, you have to say they are the same person. Okay? So you can't. Sakavadi. Having become a human, one becomes a Deva. Having become a Deva, one becomes a human being. Two are different. It is false to say that the same human being runs. If the same Pudgala runs, if the same Pudgala, not another, leaving this world, goes to the next world, then there will not be a death, nor will there be one who commits taking life, nor will there be action, result of action, result of things done. And to say that when good and bad actions become mature, the same Pudgala runs is wrong. Now, Sakavadi has the long argument here. What I have summarized is so manusso hutva devo so devoti amanta. Manusso hutva devo hoti, devo hutva manusso hoti, manusabhuto vanyo, devo vanyo, manusabhuto swayayang sandhavatiti michha. That's wrong. And it goes on like that. So Pudgalo Sandhavati, Asmaloka, Paranglokan, then argument goes on. So Manusso, so Mahisoti, Amanta, and so on. So actually in this whole section, the argument is something like what I have paraphrased. So if the same Pudgala runs, if the same Pudgala, not another, leaving this. So if you say that the same Pudgala is, runs next world, then there will not be a death. So that we cannot talk about a death. Nor will there be one who commits taking life. Because karma vipaka you cannot talk if the same person goes through. Right? Because usually in order to have karma vipaka you have to be reborn in some other existence. So implications of saying that the same person runs are moral and ethical. Nor will there be action, karma, result of action, karma vipaka, result of things done. And to say that when good and bad actions become mature, the same Pudgala runs is wrong. So this is Sakavadi's objection. This objection goes and then the argument number 5, Sakavadi asks, does the identical Pudgala run? The same question. Paravadi says, yes. Then Sakavadi asks, is there anyone who having been human becomes a yakka, or becomes a peta, becomes an inmate of Niraya, becomes a beast, camel, ox, mule, pig, and buffalo? Paravadi says to all these things 2 years. Now, of course, Sakavadi asks a series of questions. If there anyone who having become human becomes a yakka, first you are a human being, then you can become any of these things. Yakka, peta, niraya, animal, camel, and so on. Paravadi says, then the question is, does the same human being becomes buffalo? One should not say so. Now the same question, is it the same human being who becomes a buffalo? One should not say so. Now, when you say the same human being becomes a buffalo, then of course you are talking about the one particular essence of that person. I mean, on the other hand, if you understand that same thing as a causal process dependently originated, then there is no question, right? In a way, it is the same person who becomes an animal. Otherwise, no point, right? Because the person who commits the karma has to undergo it. So, the same person has to be born, but of course, in another sense, it is not the same person. So when Sakavadi asks, does the self-same human being becomes an animal, Paravadi says one should not say so. Sakavadi asks, does the self-same human being will continue to be the same? One should not say so. Then again, you see that there are very strong terms. The same person, he is not different and not separated. Then, of course, Paravadi says one should not say so. Then Sakavadi says, if the same person Pukkala runs, then the same moral argument. But of course, here Paravadi is not committing to that statement. Although Sakavadi asks, you can see that Paravadi doesn't accept it. So that it goes argument like that. Then the number 10. Sakavadi, does the same Pukkala run? Yes. Does he run with his Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana? One should not say so. Does he run with his Rupa, Vedana? Yes. And then argument goes on like that. Jiva and Sarira are the same, one should not say so. The argument continues with, does he run without his Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana? Following the same structure. And Sakavadi questions, Jiva is one, Sarira is another. To which Paravadi says, one should not say so. This number 10 argument is longer argument. It starts with Sakavadi, does the self-same Pukkala run? Paravadi says yes. Then the question is, does he run with this Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana? One should not say so. Now, this is another very interesting thing. When you say the same person runs, the question is, same person means person has Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Does he go from one birth to the other? Run here means going from one birth to the other. Does he run with this Rupa, Vedana, Sanya? Does he run with Panchakkhanda? One should not say so. Now, again, it's very interesting because how is a person reborn? Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Now, what is the five-khandha relationship? I mean, you can't say that you carry your same Panchaskandha. But on the other hand, when a person is born, something must be transmitted, right? Vijnana, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, not the Rupa. It's a subtle point. So the question, 5 questions asked, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. Paravadi says, no, I should not say so. Then Sakavadi asks, does he run with this Rupa? Again, Paravadi says yes. Now here, interestingly, why Paravadi says yes to that question is not very clear. Sometimes, the commentary doesn't help you either. But basically, you can say that if you are born again, you must have some connection to the things you had here. You can't be totally unconnected. Okay? So on the one hand, you can't say the same Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. But on the other hand, you can't say that it's completely, totally different. But the difficult question here is when he says Rupa. Because we can say Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana are non-material things. But how does the material Rupa is also connected? So that is a difficult point, not explained really. Even though Paravadi says yes to it. Then the next part of the question is, Jiva and Sarira are the same, one should not say so. Now based on that, Sakavadi asks, Jiva and the Sarira are the same. Because you are Sarira and then Jiva. Because if he accepts that Rupa is also going to the next world, then he asks the question, Jiva and Sarira are the same. One should not say so. The argument continues with, does he run without his Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, following the same structure? So then first, the question was asked, does he run with Panchakhanda. Next question asks, does he run without Panchakhanda? And Sakavadi questions, Jiva is one, Sarira is another. To which Parvadi says, why should not say so? Now, the interesting thing is, when you look at carefully, you can see that how subtle manner this whole question is, debated by, Sakavadi and Parvadi. It's in a very subtle manner. Now, we will move into the argument 11. Sakavadi does the self-same Puddala run? Parvadi says yes. Sakavadi, does Rupa run? Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana? So all the 5 questions are raised separately about Rupa. Does Rupa Sansarati, Vedana, and so on. Then Parvadi says one should not say so. Sakavadi then again asks, does Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana? Repeat the question. Parvadi says yes. Now again, this Parvadi saying no to the same question, yes to the same question is not always made clear here. Unless Parvadi accepts Rupa in a very subtle sense. Rupa in a very subtle sense, Parvadi cannot say that Rupa runs. Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, of course, being Arupa. Then Sakavadi asks, Jiva and Sarira are the same, one should not say so. And the next part of the argument is, does Rupa not run? Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara. Then Parvadi says one should not say so. And you cannot say that Rupa does not run either. Then Sakavadi asks, does Rupa not run? Then for that Parvadi says yes. No, it does not run. Even the Sarira is another, one should not say so. Now you can see that again the similar set of questions asked whether Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara runs, and then Parvadi says one should not say so. Whether Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana does not run, Parvadi says for that also one should not say so. Because again it looks like Parvadi believes that these things run in a very subtle manner or something. Unless we look at the Parvadi's arguments in the Parvadi's, the Vatsi text, we don't know the answer for this question. But anyhow, as far as Kathāvatthu is concerned, we are not told. It's not said why Parvadi gives these 2 kinds of answers. The concluding 2 stanzas say the following. Now, at the end of that part of the debate, if the Puddala disintegrates when the aggregates are disintegrated, then it is annihilationist view. If the Puddala is destroyed when the Khandas are destroyed, then that is Uchchedavada, rejected by the Buddha. If the Puddala does not disintegrate when the aggregates are disintegrated, then the Puddala like Nirvana will be everlasting. So these are the 2 polar positions. If you say Puddala is destroyed at the destruction of Panchakhanda, then of course that is annihilationism, Uchchedavada. But on the other hand, if you say when the skandhas disintegrate and the Puddala is not disintegrated, then Puddala is like Nirvana, everlasting. Now, actually, this is very interesting. To say that Nirvana is everlasting, that is not very Buddhist either. Buddhism never uses these terms, Nicho, Dhuo, Sassato, Aviparinama Dhammo, not for even to Nirvana, right? Not for even to Nirvana. So, Khandesu Vijjamanesu Yoche Soche Vijjati Pukkalo. What is that? Uchcheda Bhavati Ya Buddhena Vivajjita. Khandesu vidyamanesu nochetus vidyati puggalo sassato hoti nibbanena samsamo. Now, it's interesting, although Kathāvatthu says Nibbana is sassata, in the early discourses Buddha rejected sassata and ucheda. Now here you can see some kind of philosophical difference. Because Buddha never says Nirvana is sassata. Because if you say sassata, opposite is ucheda. Now you become the guilty of the same mistake. You are criticizing the opposition, right? How can you say Nirvana is sassata? So the early discourse never say that Nirvana is sassata. But here you say, Puggalo sassato hoti nibbanena samasamo. Puggala will become sassata, very samasama, equal to Nirvana. So Nirvana is sassata, so Puggala will also be. I mean, that part of the Kathāvatthu statement is a little bit problematic. But anyhow, forgetting about that, if we simply say that, to say that Puggala is annihilated is Uchedavada, to say that Puggala is not annihilated, and to say that Sassatavada. Both Sassatavada and Uchedavada are rejected by the Buddha. That's what it simply means. So I think that concludes the discussion we had on examination by 8, 9 is Gati, Chuti, Patisandhi, Anuyoga. You can see Gati, Chuti, Patisandhi, Anuyoga is interesting part of this discussion because it examines the concept of Puggala in a very subtle manner. And Puggala's relation to Panchakhanda and whether Panchakhanda continues or not. Now in that one particularly subtle issue is whether Rupa goes along with the Panchakhanda or whether Rupa does not go. So it appears that on the one hand, Paravadi admits that Panchakhanda including Rupa goes, and also it appears that he rejects it. So the position seems to be quite subtle. Ultimately, I think the two last stanzas summarize the correct position. You cannot either say Ucheda, you cannot or say Shastra. Both are two different extremes. You cannot say annihilated, you cannot say everlasting. So both are opposite. Okay, we will wind up from that. But that's a long the set of questions. So what you need to do is actually you need to look at the text along with my summary.